I remember now why I wanted to tell you about that horse race. Because in the final stretch, the one who's announcing the horse race, the two horses in front are the number 1 and the number 2 favorites, and they're duking it out on what had been this incredibly fast race. They're tiring, so it's a great battle in the front. And this announcer, who is so amazing, who has to memorize 20 horses and their jockeys and know everything about them, he is completely focused on these two horses coming down the stretch, battling neck and neck and neck and neck. Just a few yards from the end, he suddenly recognizes this other horse is just passing them. And he said, so he's going, and it's so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so and so. Wait! That's what it's like on the road to Emmaus this morning. Gospel lesson today from Luke 24:13-35. The appearance on the road to Emmaus. Join me in prayer. Gracious and amazing God, who on Easter morning rose from the dead, and a few hours later walks quietly next to two forlorn disciples. The amazement of the resurrection, the gentleness of your companionship are a miracle to see. So be in these words, O Lord, and make them yours. Be in our hearts, O Lord, and hold us captive. Be in these lives, O Lord, and set us free. Amen. Now, on that same day, that is the day of Christ's resurrection, two of them were going to a village called Emmaus, about 7 miles from Jerusalem, and talking with each other about all these things that had happened. While they were talking and discussing, Jesus himself came near and went to them, but their eyes were kept from recognizing him. And he said to them, Why are you discussing with each other while you walk along? They stood still, looking sad. Then one of them, whose name was Cleopas, said to him, Are you the only stranger in Jerusalem who doesn't know the things that have taken place in these days? Jesus said, What things? They replied, The news about Jesus of Nazareth, who was a prophet, mighty in deed and word before God and all the people, and how our chief priests and leaders handed him over to be condemned to death and crucified him. But we had hoped that he was the one to redeem Israel. Yes, and besides all this, it's now the 3rd day since these things took place. Moreover, some women of our group astounded us. They were at the tomb early this morning, and when they didn't find his body there, they came back and told us that they had indeed seen a vision of angels who said he was alive. Some of those who were with us went to the tomb and found it just as the woman had said, but they did not see him. Then Jesus said to them, Oh, how foolish you are, and how slow of heart to believe all that the prophets have declared. Was it not necessary that the Messiah should suffer these things and then enter into his glory? Then, beginning with Moses and all the prophets, he interpreted to them the things about himself in all the scriptures. And as they came near the village to which they were going, he walked ahead as if he was going on. But they urged him strongly, saying, Stay with us, because it's almost evening, the day is now nearly over. So he went in to stay with them. And when he was at table with them, he took bread, and he blessed it, and he broke it, and he gave it to them. and their eyes were opened, and they recognized him. And then he vanished from their sight. They said to each other, "Were not our hearts burning within us when he was talking to us on the road while he was opening the scriptures to us?" That same hour they got up and returned to Jerusalem, and they found the 11 and their companions gathered there. And they were saying, "The Lord is risen indeed. He has appeared to Simon." And then they told what had happened on the road and how he had been made known to them in the breaking of the bread. Friends, the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. I'm basing some of my sermon today on Frederick Buechner. You've heard me talk about him. His book, The Magnificent Defeat. His essay on the road to Emmaus just amazed me when I read it 20 years ago. And I reread it again, and it just, you'll notice that some of the language is a little old because it was written 20 years ago. So it talks about cocktails. Nobody talks about cocktails anymore. It's craft beer and fine wine. Poor old Frederick is out of his depth. But I'll be doing some quoting, so you'll see me read a little more than I usually do because I want to get his words right. But I will start with this. Two very forlorn individuals are leaving the city gates of Jerusalem, and they start walking away from the holy city on a late Sunday afternoon. They're traveling together. We don't really know who they are. Maybe they're friends, maybe not. Maybe they're just together because it's safer that way. But we learn they're disciples. Well, sort of. They're disciples of a fallen teacher, a rabbi who's been executed for political sedition 3 days ago. Oh, that's so embarrassing. The one you thought was going to be so great. Rome just wiped him out in a single afternoon. They're now just two dusty souls heading home amidst the flow of all the other souls who had been to Jerusalem for the Passover, stayed over for the Sabbath. They say they're heading for Emmaus. That's about 7 miles away. And if you know anything, Jerusalem is way high on this ridge that runs down the center of Israel of mountains. And it's not an easy ride walking 7 miles. It is up and it's down and it's up and it's down. 7 miles. Now, we don't know today where Emmaus is located. In fact, there are 4 villages that claim to be the place where Emmaus is. And so I'm sure all the tour buses have to get spread out among 4 towns who claim to be Emmaus. And it's curious that Emmaus is only mentioned once in the Bible, right here in Luke. And yet Emmaus, just saying that word, most of us who know gospel stories claim it as a favorite. But I think that the town of Emmaus and the road that led to it really isn't the meaning of this story. I think Luke wants us to know that the direction those two took when they left the city gates and walked into this dusky sunset, they were walking away from the cross. They were going in the wrong direction. That's what Frederick Buechner says in his essay called In the Magnificent Defeat. He suggests that these 2 disciples were confronted with this overwhelming fear that in the face of death, the whole business of Jesus' life and his death wasn't going to make any difference in their lives or in the world at all. This man had made great promises, hadn't he? He'd made great claims, didn't he? So many had placed their hope in him. But he was dead. 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 Yeah, there were rumors. Some women, some of the disciples who happened to be women, had woken up early that morning. They'd gone to the tomb, but they had this wild tale that something had happened and the tomb was empty. But rumors, are only rumors, especially in Jerusalem. Women are always getting excited over nothing. They're not called hysterical for nothing. And for these two souls, there was nothing left to do but to get out of town. And where did they go? They go to Emmaus. And where was Emmaus, and why did they go there? It's no place in particular. You don't have to find it on the map, really. And the only reason they went there was that it was as far away as they could get from Jerusalem in an afternoon. Frankly, I'm amazed. I couldn't walk 7 miles in an afternoon. They did it late into the evening. Buechner says, do you understand what I mean when I say there is not one of us who has not gone to Emmaus with them? Emmaus can be a trip to the movie, for the sake of seeing the movie, or to a cocktail party, just for the sake of cocktails, to the lake, just for the fish, to the mall, just for the shopping. Emmaus may be buying a new dress or a new car or smoking more cigarettes than you really want, or reading a second-rate novel. Emmaus is whatever we do or wherever we go to make ourselves forget that the world holds skeptics are going to claim that resurrection appearances were just figments of the disciples' imaginations. They made it up. It was wishful thinking. Luke is trying to tell you that's not true. For this is a Christ who's not a figment of their imagination, but for the rest of the time that he appears, he is always going on before. He doesn't say, I'm just going to camp here and stay with you. He puts on his sandals and he walks. He puts on his sandals and he goes ahead. So for us, Buechner says, what was it, God? What did I say? The same is true for us. Here's the turn to us. We don't control Christ. We can only welcome him. That's it. Jesus walks where he walks. He appears where he wants to appear. This resurrected Christ, who will soon ascend to his glory, while he's on earth, shows us a little bit of who he will be as a ruler of the universe. And we don't control it. It would have been something for those disciples to have him with them to prove to their friends he was real, to have him with them, their hopes restored. And just as Mary at the garden, when Jesus says, don't continue to touch me, Mary, he does the same for these two. You can't nail him down. Buechner says that line. That's pretty amazing. You can't nail Jesus down, considering the resurrection. And that's how it always is. Even if the nails we use are real ones and the thing you nail him to is a cross. He comes suddenly out of nowhere. Our lives are never the same again, either because we did not recognize him or because we did. And here's the rub of it all, Buechner says. The place where he comes is very apt to be Emmaus. Because that's the place where we spend our lives. You and me. The place in limbo where we throw up our hands and say, why should I care? How should I know? Big deal. My favorite word these days. Nah. It's not even worth the effort. So what else is new? Give me a break. I'm not at home in this world. I'm sick of it all. But there are some things that even in Emmaus we can't escape. I mean, yeah, we can escape our troubles. We can escape the job we didn't get, the friend we hurt. But we can't escape him. In other words, Buechner says, it's precisely at such times as these that Jesus is apt to come into the very midst of life at its most real and inescapable, not in a blaze of unearthly light, not in the throes of some kind of religious daydream or ecstatic vision, but at supper time, walking on a trail, heading for the mall, the mercy of mercies, walking down Main Street, Old Town Folsom, and there's a party going on. And you can't get through. For all the people you're surrounded with, just like that throng leaving Jerusalem. Suddenly you're in the sea of humanity. These are sacred moments. Moments of miracle that are everyday moments. The moments in which, if we don't look with more than our eyes or listen with more than our ears, we can't recognize the stranger coming beside us. Or the meal that ends up being like no other. When I was going home on Friday, I guess, there was this table out on the road near where I live in Diamond Springs, and it said rock sale, gem and rock sale. There's a big table full of stuff. guy. He lives in Tahoe. He's born in the San Carlos Pueblo. His dad was an engineer in a mining company. They were allowed to live on the reservation. He still mines for turquoise. He lives out of his van. And he told me he'll start from Tahoe, he'll come down here, and then he'll end up, in the fall, he'll be in Quartzsite and from Arizona, which is a big, I won't go into it. Then he goes down to Mexico. And he goes down there and then he comes back up. He goes, I don't really, he says, I've never had a cell phone, never had a computer. I live in this old van. I'm a chip seat. And I'm happy. And everything here is half off. He had me. He had me with his story. He had me with his half off. So I bought a few things. He taught me a few things. What am I looking at? And I had this sense when I left, this man was not Jesus, this man was not Christ. He bought and sold rocks, and people would come up and buy. Some guy came up and bought $700 of his geos and left. I mean, 12 big boxes. And he said, yeah, I'll go home. He'll triple his price on the internet. He said, I don't care. He said, I have no interest on the internet. This is a man who likes to tell stories and be present in the place he's at. And I drove home thinking, I'm really glad I bought this rock from this man. On Saturday, coming home with my laundry. There's something special about it, a chance encounter, a stranger who showed me something I'd never seen and opened my life in a surprising way. That's the road to Emmaus. And what happens is, they don't say, aren't you lucky you saw Jesus, let's go home. They turn around and they run 7 miles back. Tell all the others, look who we saw, we know it was him. And they tell them all the appearances that they had experienced. And I think they even believe the women. For once. The road to Emmaus is about going in one direction and a surprise makes you realize something and you return to the cross again and again and again to somehow know that the pain and the love and the war and the trauma of this world is not created so we can shrug and say, what do I know? Too big for me. We change directions because a stranger comes alongside. And in the breaking of our bread, our eyes are open. We recognize Christ in our midst. My prayer for you this Eastertide is that you might be surprised with joy. Even if it's so fleeting that it vanishes immediately when you finally figure it out, that it was there all along. That is the beginning of grace, the beginning of joy. It's the beginning of Easter for us. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit.